The lexical approach is another approach for teaching English. In this case, we're dealing with words or chunks of words within a text. So we might be learning particular types of language. What better place to learn it than inside a text with different paragraphs? Then we can see how the text or the expression forms within it. So students are taught things. We could be searching text, underlining things, circling, making discussions based on the text or the focus of teaching. The teacher could say, let's look for idioms. Now let's look through this expression. Can you identify any expression that is not directly translated exactly as it's written? For example, let me give you one. Write one on the board, and then the students will, I've seen one, and they start discussing it. What does it say? What do you think it means? So we're learning idioms within a context of a text, maybe a biography or a novel, or else students are underlining clauses in a paragraph. And then they now discuss what constitutes a clause. Okay, so you're working with the text. You're working with chunks of words or with singular words as they occur. So students can then carry out tasks that allow them to use the chunks of texts for the words they have learned. So that's the lexical approach. You're working at word level. You can give them words and you can say, take these root words and can you build new words from it? Educate. And the students can give education, educated, word level. Can you create, here are a number of words. I've written these words on the board and I want you to arrange them into lexical sets. So any words that are related together should be put together in one category. Can you do that? When they start working and they're talking, if you like, that's a lesson on its own. Okay? So that's an approach you can use in any other subject because English is the medium for instruction in your country. Okay, so we have the functional approach. This is, for me, the fastest way to teach English. If you bring a French person to me who doesn't speak English, I'm going to use this approach to get them to speak English. At the end of my lesson, they are speaking at least some expressions of English. If they don't understand the language, why should I be teaching them about verbs and idioms and all of that? I'll start with things like, okay, what do they need? They need to be able to introduce themselves. Hi, I'm Timmy. Hello, I'm Timmy. What's your name? Basic introductions. How do you do? How do you do? So I'm teaching them how to greet and how to respond. I can teach them requests. Can I have a seat? Can I take this? The functional language approach causes them to learn expression very, very quickly. So this approach highlights functions. You need the language for greeting, I'll teach it to you. And by the end of the lesson, you know how to greet in English. You want to be able to ask questions, maybe directions on the streets. How do I get to so-and-so? I'm looking for so-and-so. Can you show me the way to so-and-so? I'll teach you all the expressions. By the end of the lesson, you've learned how to make the expressions. I've taught you a few expressions. And if you keep coming to my lesson every day, your vocabulary is building. You may not understand verbs, nouns, but you are talking. And then when I get you to a certain point, then I can focus you on the present or the past tense or the future tense. But I want to build the expression first. So we could use a PPP approach, but if there's the functional approach, you should be able to identify it because the purpose, the teacher will be introducing the language for communication. They may be using the PPP approach, but basically it's the purpose. Why are they teaching this expression? It's to communicate in this way or the other. Okay? So it could be PPP, it could be another method, maybe task-based, but there's a function. There's a function that is evident. For example, learning how to greet. Sorry about the spelling on my word. I made a mistake on my slide. Greet, not great. Apologize, make requests, etc. So that's the functional approach. I've taught people who are Chinese, I've taught Italian women, and I use the functional approach when I'm teaching people whose language is not English, in whose environment there's no English. They're learning English, so the fastest way, teach them using functions. Then there's the communicative approach to teaching. Here, our focus is communicating, just like in the functional approach. But this is a little bit different. Here, we don't focus on controlled practice. We just want them to talk. So we use techniques like group work, pair work, we put them together so they can talk. And our focus is on fluency. We want them to talk. We're more interested in them producing language than in them getting language accurately. Because if you come into a city, you don't understand English or you don't speak English properly, if you can come to me and say, I want bus, I will understand you. So that's the communicative approach. We start with production and we build on that. And then later on, we can introduce some structure or some controlled activities. But this is a lesson where we're using authentic materials, we're talking or we're writing freely, we're interacting, we're playing games, we're doing activities, there could be maybe some correction here and there, but generally it is the activity and the interaction that shows you that we're using the communicative approach to teaching English. Okay? So the teacher could decide to give the students samples of language if they wanted, so that they can get them to talk more freely. So group work, focus on fluency rather than accuracy, the use of authentic materials, using real language, whether it's written or spoken, a lot of interaction and activities. We're doing things, we're speaking. It's the communicative approach. The grammar translation method is where people used to translate directly from L1, first language, to second language. So you're teaching English, and then you ask the student, how do you say I'm hungry in Yoruba? Ebing pami. I hope I got it right. The pronunciation is not perfect. And then the teacher says, now, if we directly translated that into English, if we were going to be very fair, it directly translates to hunger is killing me. So you see, there's the connotative meaning and the denotative meaning. So the denotative meaning, if we're translating it directly, hunger is killing me, which is the connotative meaning, but it's translated as I'm hungry. So you can see that the grammar translation method would have some problems. How do you say I'm hungry and then you translate it to hunger is killing me? But that's what I'm hungry is in Yoruba. I don't know if there's another expression in Yoruba for I am hungry, but being mami, I'm being killed by hunger. Okay, so grammatical terms are provided, the rules of grammar are taught. So you teach them the rules. So you translate, hunger is killing me. So which is the subject, which is the object, which is the verb, or is it past tense or future tense or present tense? But you can see I've shown you the weakness of this direct translation method because we might translate it incorrectly. Okay, and it would be strange to somebody else. So if the person learns I'm hungry with direct translation of Ebin Pami, so you come into England and you go to a shop and say hunger is killing me, nobody's going to understand you. Okay, so this kind of lesson emphasizes grammatical accuracy. It uses controlled practice and it focuses on grammar. It's a direct translation from the mother tongue to the. And with this method, if we have false friends also, it could be confusing for learners. False friends is a word in your native language that seems close to a word in English. So you think the two words have the same meaning, but they don't actually. TBR. Total physical response. Great for students who love activities, okay? And for young learners or for beginners. If you're learning the language, whether you're an adult or you're a child, you need a lot of activities and excitement to encourage you to learn the language. So total physical response is one of the ways we do it. So learners are exposed to the language. The teacher is giving instructions. Today we're going to learn action words. Okay, now, when I tell you a word, can you do it? Everybody jump. Sit down. They sit. Run. Shake hands. Shake. And they're learning that verbs are action words. Or a total physical response that I've done before is where you can try this out in your English classroom. If your students hate your comprehension lesson because it's boring and you don't know what to do, try this one. Otherwise, go to what we have learned. There are different ways of teaching comprehension. But this particular one, take a text, maybe 4 pieces of text, and paste it in 4 different places in the classroom. And then have questions for the 4 different groups you create. So in the group, you ask your students to nominate a group leader. And the group leader, you nominate a scribe or a secretary who is going to be answering the questions. Then you nominate somebody as a runner. So the task is the group members are sitting with the questions with them. So the runner is going to read the question, run to the text, find the answer, and come back and give it to the group. So you'll see students running. I've done it when I was doing my Cambridge CELTA. They tried it on us, even adults. It's fun. The funny thing is that in between, sometimes somebody's running to the text. They ran to the text and then they forgot the question. So they ran back to read the question. When they get the answer, the person who is writing gives the answer. And the first group that completes it and gets the correct answer is the winner. So that's a game. So you see runners, 4 or 5 people running across the classroom to the different place where their text is. Or you can do it in reverse. You can paste the questions and keep the text here. So the runner comes and says, the question is, who jumped around the fence? Okay, let's look for the answer. But usually it's the text that is pasted out there and the question is here. So in between, as you run with the question, sometimes you get to the text, you run back, I've forgotten the question. Or you run, you found the answer. As you're running back, you forgot, you run back to get the question again. It's a very interesting type of activity. That is a total physical response. And you can do it in geography, history, in any subject, science. You can even do it in mathematics using word problems. Okay, so that's the total physical response. And in the TKT, you have to be able to identify it. When they create the scenario for you, you need to be able to say, oh, this looks like a total physical response because the learners are using all their bodies. They're jumping, they're running, they're dramatizing. It's TPR. PPP. The teacher taught first, then the students did some practice. She checked if their understanding, and then they did freer practice. PPP. TBL. She told them to do something, and as they were doing it, they were asking her questions, and she was teaching them. After they finished producing what they had done, she taught the lesson and highlighted the rule or the points she was making. TPR. They're running around using their bodies to do activities. That's TPR. So you just need to be able to identify the different techniques, and they'll say, is A, is it TPR? B, is it this? C, is it this? You just need to recognize the forms. Test, teach, test. Very good when students think that a topic is very simple. Or for feedback, you start your lesson by giving a quiz or a little test. Then you teach the lesson and you test again, and you find out that the students did better at the end of the lesson than at the beginning of the lesson. The test, teach, test approach is used to capture the attention of your learners. So because you gave them a test of what they haven't learned and they couldn't get it all right, they will pay attention during the lesson to know what they missed out. So that's just basically what it is. Okay. So at the end of the lesson, you can now teach. You test, you teach, you test. At the end of the lesson, the student does better. And you get feedback beginning and at the end. Guided discovery is my favorite method for teaching grammar. It's good for teaching science, but I love to use it for teaching grammar because grammar is full of rules. So I can use this to guide my students to identify the rules of grammar. So for example, I will create the context. Okay, there's no hard and fast rule, but it's what you do that tells you it's guided discovery. So you start by eliciting or getting language from the learners. So I went to a party yesterday. What do you think I did? Oh, you drank some so and so drank. You ate some rice, ate. So I'm making two columns of words. I'm eliciting the verbs. I'm sure you danced. I put danced in a different column. You must have listened to music. So I go to my board, I put listened on one side. Did you swim by any chance? I'm sure you swam. Was there a pool? Did you swim? You must have swum. Put it there. At the end, you have two lists of verbs and you have carefully arranged them. It's guided discovery. What words do you think? What are these words? They're verbs. Verbs of what? What are they saying? What are they showing? Past tense. Good. Fantastic. Great. Now I have a list of past tense verbs on my left and I have a list on my right. Can you see anything about them? Is there any peculiar thing you can see? You say, all the words on the left side end with ed. Ah, they do? So does it mean that if I have a word like pool, I can form the past tense by adding ed? Yes! They just discovered the rule for regular verbs. A regular verb can be formed into past tense by adding ed. How about this one's on the right side? Ate, drank. What do you think? They don't have anything in common. Great. That's fantastic. We call them irregular verbs because they don't follow the rules. They are rule breakers. And so we just have to learn words like this, the way they are as past tense. But these ones, you can just, regular verbs, when you meet them, you just add ed and that's the past tense. We just discovered the rule for the past tense. And I don't know why teachers like to teach the regular verbs separately from the irregular verbs. I like to differentiate. So I can teach both in one lesson, even to a 5-year-old. Okay, so you highlight the rules when the students have discovered it. This method can be taught with a PPP, that's presentation, practice, and production. You can use TBL, you can use a functional approach, but the important thing is that there's a guided discovery. The teacher is guiding the learners to discover the language rule. So it's usually used most of the time for controlled practice. Okay, they are discovering something. Then you have content-based learning. It's used a lot in primary and secondary school. We're looking at the text, the content, to check our understanding of, or to introduce grammar, lexis, function. Language is presented using interesting topics. So we read and then we learn something from the text. So we can use a history text, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Let's read this. Okay, take time out to read it. What does it say? Okay, so let's look at the text. What tense can you see being used in this text? The past tense. Oh, it's the past tense, okay? Can you find any other tense? You're focusing them. So you're teaching them grammar from a text. from ancient history, geography, science, So the method is based on content from literature or from any other field. So you see, we can teach comprehension and grammar at the same time. So we're highlighting the language features. We can be teaching adjectives and we can use content. We can teach any part of grammar, idioms, whatever, from content. So that's another method. Now, this particular one, content and language integrated learning, CLIL, that's a method. Usually works in a country where English is not essentially, where English is a foreign language. English is not foreign in countries like Nigeria, because when you're a child, you're listening to English, it's in your environment, it's not completely foreign. In principle, it's foreign, but it's not really foreign because it's spoken in the environment, even if the child has a mother tongue. The child could pick the mother tongue or could pick up English. Okay, but this method, assuming we're living in, say, maybe French speaking Cameroon, and we wanted to introduce English, we can use this method because all learning is in French, but we decide that we want to use English to teach geography so the students can learn how to speak English. So here, language is looked as a means to communicate meaning. It's relevant in countries where English is not commonly spoken. Okay, so it's learned best when you use English to learn something else. So the subject is taught in the second language. So in Cameroon, where they're speaking French, in French Cameroon, you can decide that you want to teach your children English and you decide to dedicate one particular subject to be taught in English. And they would learn expressions by learning that subject. So the lesson focuses on the subject being taught, not on English. We're learning geography, but really we're learning English because we're teaching geography in English. We're learning vocabulary, geographical vocabulary in English. Students learn by learning the English language needed to interact in the subject being taught. Okay, so that is content and language integrated learning. It doesn't work where, like in a country like Nigeria, where we speak English on the streets. So that is another teaching approach.